Good morning, Pelham Road. A blessed Thursday to you. This morning, our program is brought to you by our YouTube station over at Pelham Road. Go and check us out at YouTube. You can see children's videos, children's books read. You can see archives of these devotions and the Sunday services. And there's liable to be other things over there that they haven't told me about. So check it out at YouTube, the Pelham Road Baptist Church station. Well, this is the first of really a two-part devotion. For the older folks, a revival needs no explanation. But for younger folks, I need to explain what a revival is. There once was a day when a church would have week-long services at night. I know, it's hard to get your head around that. Week-long services at night. They would invite a guest preacher. Sometimes they would call this person an evangelist. And prior to the worship service, they would maybe serve a meal. Oftentimes that was the case. Then Monday through Friday evening, each evening, there'd be a service with preaching and singing. And some churches did this twice a year, once in the fall and another in the spring. Others could really only afford it about once a year. I needed to explain because this story that I'm about to tell you is about a revival. The town was Halfway. That was its name. As its name sort of implied, it was halfway in the middle of nowhere. It was halfway between a town called Hot Coffee and another town called Edgewater. The pastor of the church was planning a fall revival, so he decided to invite an evangelist. He really wasn't an evangelist, but he was just a pastor of another church there in Union County. But he did about 6 revivals a year, so he had developed a reputation as sort of the evangelist in the neighborhood. And so when the halfway pastor called the guest preacher said, "Well, I'll be glad to come and do it. I'll be glad to do your revival." He went on and he asked the pastor, he said, "How much money will the church be spending on advertising and promotion for the revival?" And the pastor was a young fella, and he said, "Well, I guess we'll run an ad in the Hot Coffee Recorder for a week or two, and the youth will go out on the bypass and put flyers on the windshields at the Walmart, flyers of the cars at the Walmart." Anyway, the preacher speculated that between the cost of running everything off and the ad and everything and the pizza you had to pay the youth with, that it might be $500. So the guest preacher asked the pastor if he'd be open to a new idea. And the pastor was young, and the guest preacher was as close to a professional as he knew. And the guest preacher spoke up. He said, "Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take that $500 and hide it in the sanctuary during the week of revival? Make an announcement one Sunday about this and tell the people what they find belongs to them. That if they find any of the money, it belongs to them. Word of mouth will take care of the rest, and you'll have big crowds. And we'll put out 40 $10 bills and maybe one $100 bill and hide it throughout the entire church." The pastor had some hesitation about this. He thought it was pretty close to bribing people to come to church, but the guest preacher was the professional, and he won the day. And the guest preacher said, "Well, now, listen, Pastor, this always brings the folks back. This is much better than a barbecue. It's fall, for goodness sakes, in football country. You got any better ideas to compete with Monday night football and Friday high school games?" Well, it was the Saturday before the start of the revival, and Uncle Billy was cleaning the church. We called him Uncle Billy. I don't know exactly why we called him Uncle Billy. He wasn't my uncle, and as far as I know, he wasn't anybody's uncle. But anyway, he was the fire chief at the Halfway Volunteer Fire Department. And he pieced together a living as the greeter at Walmart and doing the towing for the city of Edgewater, as well as some part-time work here at the church for cleaning. And every Saturday he came by to dust the pews and straighten up the hymnals, remove the previous week's bulletins, vacuum the carpet, remove the gum the kids had put underneath the pews. and he was dusting off the floral arrangement when he heard the door open. And he turned and he saw Sarah coming down the aisle. Now, Sarah had a lot of names, but most you couldn't say in church. And Uncle Billy felt about Sarah like he did thunderstorms. He always felt better when they were both gone. But nonetheless, Uncle Billy, always polite, said, "Sarah, what brings you to church on a Saturday?" "Well, Billy, I stopped by to get a Sunday school book to take to Esther. She's back from visiting her sister down in Pretense, and I'd love for her to get started back in Sunday school." "Well, that's kind of you, Sarah. I'm looking forward to a good revival. You know, they've already hid the money." Sarah's reply was quick and pointed. "Now, Uncle Billy, don't be expecting me to collect any of the devil's money. I never heard of such. I plan on singing all the songs from memory. I'm not going to touch a hymnal all week. The Lord can't bless any revival using the lottery to pack the pews." Now, Sarah, if the Lord could use Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar for his purposes, why can't he use American money? "Billy, I don't expect you to understand, but who ever heard of bribing people to come to church?" Well, Billy turned his attention back to the flowers and politely changed the subject, as he was prone to do. Sarah picked up the Sunday school book and then graciously asked Uncle Billy about his sick sister over in Edgewater, as we Southerners often do. Billy gave her a medical update and then excused himself to vacuum the foyer. I'll tell you the rest of this story tomorrow. Will the preacher lose his job over this? Can Sarah sing from memory? And is Uncle Billy already shaking the pew Bibles and hymnals for money? Learn the rest of the story Friday. See you then.